You ever heard the term be a real man? Unfortunately, I have. And it's actually kind of funny because it seems as though it's always used as a shaming tactic to get you, as the man, to be taken advantage of without you realizing it. And there's always this silly rhetoric that a real man does this, a real man does that. A real man should be like XYZ. A real man is supposed to be whatever. And honestly, I ain't trying to hear it no more. Bottom line is, ask people what a real man is, and they'll describe a fool, a sucker, or somebody that's easily taken advantage of. And one thing that's really apparent to me is that so many guys hear these real man qualifiers and they try to live up to the expectations that other people put on them. Now, I consider myself a fairly pragmatic person, so I try to understand things from a logical perspective, but this is just something that I've never really understood or really made sense to me. So let's start by breaking it down. First, let's talk about false masculinity. Something I've noticed over the years is that most men get their sense of masculinity from one thing: their ability to be utilized or validated by women. As a result of that, masculinity is often weaponized and redefined in relation to how much it benefits a woman. Once I recognized this pattern, it became apparent that being a real man is just one big game of manipulation. Let's face the facts, man. Most men have no standards. In fact, most men ain't even allowed to have standards. They go out into the world, they look for approval, they look for confirmation, they look for a woman to basically pat them on the head and say good job whenever they do something in their eyes is deemed right. They're constantly adjusting to what a woman wants. And this comes into play, especially when it comes to dating, which we'll get to later. But like, these guys will let a woman do whatever she wants, walk all over him. And ultimately, this is where the real man accusations come into play. One of the ultimate fears that a lot of guys have nowadays is that they really don't want to be called insecure. And following insecure, it's usually something like a misogynist or an incel or a loser or a lame, fragile ego. You know, all these different terms come into play whenever a guy, nowadays, it really just seems like you have to be disagreeing with a woman for that to be thrown at you. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't want to date a woman, for example, if she has a wild past, you're insecure. But if you go ahead and date her and she destroys your life, everyone's going to tell you, well, you should have known. The problem with being a real man is that the cycle never stops. It becomes a trap of inconsistent, arbitrary goalposts. And honestly, the idea of traditionalism is mostly one-sided these days anyway. Society has become extremely comfortable with telling men what they're supposed to be doing or what they should be doing, but there's really no real woman equivalent to that. And the concept of intersexual dynamics, it seems as though men are given duties and women have options. And one of the main things that are being pushed is that men are supposed to sacrifice with no compensation. Society expects individual men to sacrifice everything, especially their happiness and well-being, for everybody but themselves. Sacrifice for a job, sacrifice for a country, sacrifice for a woman, sacrifice your hobbies, sacrifice your lifestyle. And there's really no explanation as to why you should. You're supposed to take on a brunt of the work and not expect a reward. In my eyes, be a real man or man up, it doesn't cut it anymore. There has to be a good reason to do things. Benefits, rewards, reciprocation, something. You can't expect people to be altruistic for things that do not benefit them at all. Another one of the toughest things is that you have to also sacrifice logic to be a real man. You can't say anything negative about a woman. Otherwise, you're not a man, you're hurt, you're feminine, you're sassy, you're a Rainbow Club member, you can't handle a strong woman, or the usual, you're a narcissist. The gaslighting and manipulation tactics are super predictable. Men are supposed to apologize for things they didn't do, work hard for things they won't get. And I think we just have to get out of this idea of this warped masculinity and focus on individual happiness for ourselves as men. Sometimes it's better to be selfish. And I feel as though happiness is about being able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, not laboring while other people enjoy. Some of my favorite examples of being a real man include, but are not limited to, a real man takes her as she is with no questions asked. Meanwhile, he should jump through hoops, meet all her standards, and she shouldn't be expected to settle for less. A real man knows if he wants to marry a girl after knowing her for 2 weeks. A real man never expects reciprocity, doesn't have boundaries, and accepts anything. A real man pays all the bills and gives her money whenever she wants it. A real man doesn't care if she's been with 50 guys before him or with any guys while with him. He's supposed to just accept it. A real man doesn't care if she communicates with other men on social media. A real man puts up with everything and should have zero emotions afterwards. A real man takes insults, humiliation, abuse, and doesn't leave. They embrace the challenge of handling her. And I'm sure many of these stories and many of these perspectives sound very, very relevant to maybe you who's watching. So feel free to share some below. Now, when it comes to the hypocrisy when it comes to dating, I do find it pretty funny though. It's amazing how a particular woman can have makeup, fake hair, fake lashes, fake shape, fake ass, fake chest, fake facial structure, fake body, fake nose, fake lips, fake eyebrows, fake nails, fake height with heels on, even a fake personality. But guess what? They can still demand a real man. Ain't that crazy? Now, next thing I want to talk about is divide and conquer. And this is more so about men versus men. One of the most underrecognized uses of being a real man or saying a real man is how it gets certain men to throw others under the bus to be the realest man of them all. And that's really, a lot of guys want to be accepted by women far and wide and receive validation and, just do things the way that they believe women want them to be. And this can lead them to acting against their own best interests to draw approval and look better to other guys or look better compared to other guys. So this can include aligning your talking points or doing things that are outside the norm, pandering to like a super high degree where it's so obvious, running interference with weird agendas that don't really necessarily align with who you are, but you're doing it again because you want to be approved. Some great examples of guys who change their behavior to get female approval include, but are not limited to, simps, suckers, bootlickers, panders, men who deflect accountability from women, overly performative dudes, male feminists, virtue signalers, white knights, male best friends, friend zone dwellers, orbiters, both-siders, macho men, sexually deprived men, and men with gynocentric mentalities. You have to really keep an eye on all these kinds of guys, and usually they out themselves pretty fast. I know social media wise, it's even more apparent when you see it. One thing I always try to make sure I emphasize is that if you see a guy being really, really obvious with this stuff, you should always question their motivation for it. Why is their answer always, oh, it's the man's fault? It's almost like they're acting like women have no agency. Now, dudes who try to resort to like dirty macking or throwing dudes under the bus, peacocking, or sabotage, they really don't have any honor. What usually happens when these guys act against their own interests is that women will use these fools as standards for what they believe they deserve. And funny enough, these dudes are almost always mentioned in past tense because obviously being a sucker has a shelf life and there's no honor in being a sucker. Do you know how many men out there are coaxed into believing they're getting a great deal with a woman even when the opposite is obvious? Remember all those examples I gave earlier? Try to picture what your life would be like if you lived up to those real man standards. There's men out there who pay all the bills, no matter how much he creates, pays for all the date nights. He takes care of her. He takes her baggage. He tries to make her happy, you name it. When you become a real man by their definition, either two things will happen. Either you aren't appreciated or you will be expected to maintain that baseline that you set indefinitely. And she will continue adding more and more and more onto your plate because, again, if you're a real man, you should be able to handle it, which is what you agreed to. And the problem is, if you stop doing it, she'll just say you are faking being a real man or a good man all along. The key is that if you have all the responsibility, you're going to get all the blame too. Honestly, it's just a con game, man. It's just using your ego against you. And the truth that a lot of men need to hear is that just because you have a woman around doesn't mean you're winning. Plenty of men accept iniquities. They accept baggage. They accept bills. They accept Pookie Juniors. They accept responsibilities. They accept her endless expectations. You jump through all them hoops and you really can't ask for anything in return. The sad truth is that a lot of guys get to the point of feeling resentful about their relationships. Why? Because they've given more than they've gotten. And that's going to take a toll on you in the long run. One of the worst cases of being a real man is when guys start developing this thing I call yes man syndrome. It's when the man's self-esteem and masculinity have worn down so much that He lets a woman walk all over him completely. These dudes are like zombies, man. They ask for permission to go everywhere. The woman is always right. They follow their girl around all day, in the mall, to the gym, to the grocery store. They get cheated on and take her back. They do chore play to get 5 minutes in the bed. They cower in the corner to not get yelled at by her. They get their little man caves while she runs the rest of the house. It's a sad sight to see, man. And how do you get there? It starts by being a sucker. Once you get too far, it ain't no turning back, really. It's gonna cost you something to get out of there. Either your pride, your money, or your dignity. And the funniest part about it is that being submissive and bowing down to her is what's gonna make her not be attracted to you anyways. Coddling her emotions, being weak and not speaking with conviction, that ain't gonna help you either. In my opinion, it's much better to stand on what you believe in instead of trying to tiptoe around and hand the keys to her. Moral of the story, manipulation is so easy when people know how to use their ego against you. Society will use it, other men will use it, women will use it. Don't let them do it. Don't let anyone write your story or run the show for you. Validation from others ain't worth a damn because it's here today and gone tomorrow. All right, y'all. So that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter where I share stories and my notes from the solo life, things I've learned, lessons I've dealt with, and just things that I've grown from. I really think could help you all out. So make sure you subscribe to that. Follow me on my socials at Monoqor. Y'all know what to do, man. And as always, leave a like and subscribe for more.